Good morning, one and all. It's Sassy Mint Grace here again. It's moving on through March, and this is chapter 34 of Hope's Kiss. And this chapter is mostly about Carrie. Carrie had to answer the door in her pajamas. It was a young man with a military haircut and jeans and t-shirt with a leather jacket standing there. He started, "Hi, Carrie, where's MJ? Remember me? I'm MJ's cousin Jason." Taken by surprise like this, Carrie was confused. He stepped inside the threshold and continued as he shut the door behind him. "Remember, she said if I ever got out this way to be sure and drop by. I'm in town for 2 days, so I thought I'd at least come by for a visit. Where's MJ?" Carrie was tense, but then remembered some mention of a cousin her wife had reconnected with online seeking family history. Now she had the unpleasant task of explaining to him where his cousin was and why. She showed him the closet and invited him to hang his jacket up and stow his backpack there. He followed her to the kitchen where she offered him coffee or tea and asked if he was hungry. He refused the hot drink, but on discovering there were no alcoholic beverages in the place, he accepted a large glass of apple juice and a toasted fried egg sandwich. Carrie hadn't bothered to eat for the most part, and therefore whatever was left in the fridge was outdated or moldy. But there were several eggs and a scraping of the mayo jar furnished enough for a sandwich job. She nibbled on a piece of dry toast while he gobbled his in moments. She had arrived out from He had arrived from out west for a job interview. He wasn't able to book a flight that would get him in and out of town the same day, so we decided to do some sightseeing and visit them while he was around. He went on excitedly that he planned on seeing the longest covered bridge in the world up in Heartland, the tidal bore at the Refreshing Falls, and the famous Magnetic Hill. He'd rented a car and hoped she and MJ would show him around. Carrie cleared her throat and scratched her arm roughly. "Well, I'm sorry, but that's not possible right now." Catching her grave tone, he lost his enthusiasm and then quietly waited for her to go on. Carrie continued, "MJ has gone away. I'm not sure when she'll get back." Jason sighed and considered this, and then with concern said, "Have you two split up? MJ always seems so happy and madly in love." "Oh, no, not at all. MJ and I are totally nuts about each other." He questioned, "Well, where is she then?" Carrie scratched her scalp and her right ear as she tried to figure out how much to tell him, and she let out a long, sad sigh and went on, "She's in jail." Jason's voice rose as he responded, "What? For what?" Carrie continued, "Well, that's what's interesting and unbelievable as well. She's been charged with terrorism by the U.S. His lungs filled with air, and he stood up straight, growing about a third in size. "What? Terrorism? That's insane." Carrie nodded sadly. "Yes, it is. You know that. I know that. And everybody knows her knows that, but it's irrelevant because the leaders of the free world think she's guilty and they can do whatever they want to Canadians now because of the agreements between their spy agency and ours. They trade security data and suspected terrorists with ease. The Canadian government saved the expense of trying her here and shipped her to the States, dirty bastards. Not only that, they won't even let me cross the border to visit her because of the nature of her charges. I might be in on it too, they figure. I wouldn't be surprised if I get summoned yet." Jason took this all in with his mouth open. Finally, he huffed and said, "Would you like me to stay with you until she gets home, or would you like me to go across and see if they'll let me see her and I can take and send messages between you?" Carrie carefully considered this option and then replied, "It could get you in trouble if you figure out who you are." He announced, "I'm not worried about that. I've always been on the right side of the law. They can't dig up anything on me. I'll be okay." She scratched her left ear and then her right hip, sighed, and accepted his offer. She told him that she could pay for his transportation and accommodations, but first they had to see if he could even get access to visit her. They decided to say he was an old friend of her family. Carrie immediately looked up the appropriate phone numbers and she remembered, "What about the job interview? What if we get the job and they want you to start?" Jason smiled. "That's covered. They were already expecting me to give me time to do all my packing and closing down and transferring of business situations before I started if I got hired." Relieved, she passed him the phone, then asked him, "Did you bring your passport?" Jason smiled again. "Of course. The job I applied for requires it." When he began dialing the number, she went to the bedroom to select clothes and dress. She felt a little relief at least being able to have some word of what was happening down there. The only thing she was curious about was what she had assumed that Jason was that she had assumed that Jason would be a little less well spoken since he was a truck driver. Maybe that was a stereotypical assumption. She shook the notion off as she brushed his hair and chose a pair of copper pentacle earrings. She noticed her arm was red. Again, she had unconsciously scratched until she bled. She went into the linen closet and fetched bedding for the sofa. She needed to go and pick up the groceries to feed this guy too. She at least had a bit of energy. Nothing zapped her dry as much as feeling powerless over a situation. Now things were not entirely out of her control. She had a goal to get her through. Chapter 35. Jennifer Dixon carefully studied the document that she had opened 20 minutes earlier. She was still in shock from the sights in the church sanctuary several days ago when she looked at the similar incidents across the country, in fact, the continent. She found her mouth so dry that she had to reach for her clover tea. She tasted it, then added the second small plastic portion container. Funny. After a wasted search digging in the bag it came in for a stir stick. She made do with her pencil off the desk. As usual, the sloppy service left her with a sticky pencil. She shook her head in disgust and took a drink of the hot, sweet drink. She continued on with her perusal of the file. The first case was a plague of locusts. In February, a cyclone flooded Madagascar, making prime breeding conditions for locusts. Now, half the island's area has been infected by a huge swarm of locusts. Because each swarm can devour 100 metric tons of green a day. This was an environmental catastrophe which promised famine. This is what was considered the truest sign of the approaching apocalypse according to the Old Testament. That was a rationalization one congregation chose as the conclusion to jump the gun, so to speak, on the rapture. At another church, they interpreted the lightning struck at St. Peter's Cathedral the day Pope Benedict resigned to mean the end was nigh. Some doomsayer reminded the press of the prophecy of St. Malachi. He was a 12th century Archbishop of Armagh, who had visions of 112 Catholic popes and told that when things were finished, the seven hills will be destroyed and the dreadful judge will judge his people. Therefore, when Francis I is finished, so is the world. The next case of group suicide was at a small rural community in Georgia. Their bad news was a report of 13,000 dead pigs found floating in the Shanghai River in China. Then more than 1,000 ducks. It was surmised that these deaths are from a new strain of avian flu, which promised to wipe out the majority of the human population via pandemic. A gaggle of geeks in Victoria, BC decided to end it when they learned that the mother of all solar sunstorms was due and would inevitably knock society back to the dark ages by wiping out the current generation of satellite technology, as well as GPS navigation systems, cell phones, and wireless systems. The next Christian group to check out was listening to predictions from Dr. F. Kenton Bishore, president of the World Bible Society, who claims that based on what Hal Lindsey predicted in the 80s, the rapture is imminent. Jennifer leaned back in her chair and picked up her cup and tipped it up. She polished off over half of it and placed it on the desk away from the files, as she was known to be accident prone, and continued. A community-centered book club took seriously the news. It was time to get going from the planet due to the prediction made by the author David Flynn in the book Temple at the Center of Time. Apparently, Isaac Newton's prediction math was corrected by the author and seen to be soon. She closed the file and decided it was time to get something to eat. She opened the yellow pages and scanned through restaurants, considering what could be ready the quickest. She called her order into the Chinese Dragon and packed up for the day. Chapter 36. Temple opened the door of the church hall and reached into the dark for the light. Apparently, the last volunteer had forgotten to turn the lights on before she went down to the basement room to do her afternoon shift at the helpline. She carefully descended the steep steps to a small, musty-smelling room where the phone was located. Margot was not there. After she took her place at the phone and got comfortable by adjusting the old peeled black leather office chair, she reached for a magazine. It was only moments before the absence of her fellow volunteer left her mind. until suddenly, before the dark blue painted desk, appeared Margot, seemingly out of thin air. Temple jumped and screamed, "Shit, you scared me. Where were you?" Then panted to calm herself. Margot snickered and answered, "A bit jumpy, are we? I was in the can, you mind? Don't volunteers get pee breaks?" She laughed. Temple, now settled, answered, "What do you expect? Everything was in darkness when I got here and the phone was unattended. What if somebody called while you were gone? What if that was the only moment they reached out for help?" Margot yawned and stretched and rolled her eyes. "My God, woman, you take yourself way too seriously. Get a life," she teased. "I'm starved. Did you bring supper?" "No, you don't have anything, do you? You want me to drop off something to you?" Temple replied, "No, thanks. I already ate, and I'll eat when I get home. It helps me to sleep better, and I need something to take my nighttime meds with anyway." Just as Margot turned to leave, Temple reminded her to turn the lights on when she arrived for the late shift. Margot nodded and took off. Temple opened the magazine and picked through the pages for interesting reads. There was an article about renovating garages she looked over, and she came across one about the greenhouse effect on the planet's climate. She began it, but decided not to, remembering how sad these always made her. Anything about degradation of the environment and extinction of plants and animals was a bad mental medicine for her. She closed the book and pulled a small journal from her purse and began to write in it. This went on for 20 minutes, and then the phone rang. She grabbed the official form that she was required to fill out with each call. It was recorded when the call arrived, which she did as she picked up in the middle of the third ring. She said in her most gentle but positive voice, "Hello?" The line was silent. She tried again. "Hello? Can I help you?" She heard a sniff on the other end and added, "It's okay now. You can tell me all about it." Still silence. She waited 3 seconds and then launched in with, "It doesn't matter what your trouble is. You can talk about it. I'll just listen if that's all you want, or I can suggest how you can get through the situation. Want to give it a shot?" She heard more sniffling on the line, then the sound of a nose being blown. Then a man's deep voice came over the phone with the words, "I'm not worthy of helping. I'm a piece of garbage. I should be destroyed." Temple responded, "I doubt that's true. I've learned that often in life people are their own worst critics." "Why on earth do you say that about yourself?" "Because I'm a pervert. I get off on being humiliated and beaten. That's sick. I have never admitted this before, but the self help people claim you're only as sick as your secrets. Now, what have you got for me, Miss Save the World?" Temple cogitated the man's words and answered, "Did you ever hurt anyone else for pleasure?" Immediately he threw back, "Were you not listening? I thought you were a good listener." "No, I don't hurt anyone else. I enjoy being put down and slapped and whipped and burned. I get off on being tortured. What kind of sicko could enjoy that? I need to either be killed or sent off to a desert island to live by myself." She was at a loss here as to what to say to this man about his self revulsion. She heard him begin sobbing, and the phone dropped on the floor table. She heard a click, and then another click, and then gunfire. She screamed into the phone, "Hello! Hello!" She used the second phone to call 911. The computer system was able to trace any numbers calling the center so that help could be dispatched as quickly as possible. She calmly and quickly explained the caller's situation and then hung up as soon as she heard the sirens in the distance on the other end of the helpline. She got up and stretched in the attempt to relax the tension in her arms and shoulders, and then she walked down the hall to the water fountain and leaned over for a drink. Then she proceeded to the small washroom and washed her hands, as she always did, to symbolically let go of the emotional energy of the crisis call by washing it all down the drain. And that's it for Monday. Saw you tomorrow.